Hi, everyone. I wanted to remind you of a must read. This is a book that you have to have on your bookshelf. It is called The Necktie and the Jaguar by Greer. He is able to help you make important decisions, give you some guidance on which path to take, and you get to learn how he tapped into the wisdom and power of the unseen worlds for guidance and inspiration. I had the opportunity to interview him, and he was a lovely guest on the Path 11 podcast, episode 343. Check it out, listen to the podcast, go buy the book. Again, it's The Necktie and the Jaguar by Greer. To find out more information, go to his website, carlgreer.com. That's spelled CarlGreer.com. Today's podcast episode is sponsored by the Reconnective Healing Global Community. I don't know if you guys remember, but back in 2020, we released an episode with Dr. Eric Pearl and Jillian Fleer about reconnective healing. He was a chiropractor who was working in his practice in Los Angeles, and his patients started to report that they were having these healings just with his hands being near them without him actually touching them. So he went on to research and try to find out what this universal wisdom was behind what was happening, and he developed the reconnective healing process. Their website is thereconnection.com, and they are offering an online level 1 class called The Portal to awaken your own healing ability and to learn how to do this. There's over 8 hours of interactive content where you will learn to interact with energy, light, and information to experience lasting knowingness, peace, and love without limitations. They gave us a coupon code to give to all of our listeners. It is Path2Portal. We're going to put that in the show notes, and that's 25% off of the Portal online level 1 course. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know if you take it. Send me an email. Would love to know how the course works for you. Hi, and thanks for tuning in to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna. At the Path 11 podcast, we are here trying to deliver leading-edge research on consciousness, healing, and metaphysics. And just like you, we are trying to answer the big questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our purpose? We hope by listening to our podcast, it will make each day you live on Earth a little easier to understand. And now for today's podcast. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Path 11 podcast. We are going to be talking about something that I don't know a whole lot about, so I'm really excited to get educated about the I Ching. Not sure if you guys have ever heard of this before, but my guests today, Timothy and Johanna, they are going to teach me all about it. I had the opportunity to read their book, and I found it to be pretty fascinating. The book is called The I Ching Oracle. And my guests today, they are an Anglo-Dutch couple who have lived and worked in many different countries and are currently living in the Netherlands. So it's really cool to be talking to somebody all the way across the world. Over the years, they have studied and practiced the art of divination, which the I Ching, we'll get into that and how that works. They have been using divination as a tool for making very important decisions. And this I Ching, they have been consulting for many, many years, and it has helped them throughout their lives. And I'm hoping they're going to teach us how we can use it in our lives and understand the mystery of it. And hopefully we'll be able to help ourselves because I learned that there's 2 easy ways to be able to read the I Ching. All you need are coins and sticks. So we're going to learn a little bit more about that. So welcome, Tim and Johanna.
Yeah, thank you, April. Good to be with you. Good to be vision.
Same here. So I'm probably going to ask very elementary questions because I've heard of the I Ching before, but I've never used it. I'm familiar with runes. I'm familiar with other oracle decks in the tarot. So I understand what divination is, but I have never experienced using the I Ching or throwing coins or sticks before. So I might ask very beginner questions if that's okay with you guys.
Well, by the way, if you read tarot, then that is not so different from I Ching. It's very similar.
Yes, that when I was reading the book, that's kind of what I was getting from it too. I was like, okay, well, I consult my tarot decks, my animal card decks very similarly. So why don't you guys start off with giving us a little bit of background of what the I Ching actually is?
Okay. The I Ching is actually a Chinese classic. It was first compiled way back about 1000 BC. It's a system of hexagrams that you use to divine the future. Our book is an interpretation of the Chinese classic, but based on our own experience of consulting the oracle and that through consulting the oracle, we built up a whole heap of knowledge about the different hexagrams. So that's really where we're coming from there.
Yeah, and is it pronounced I Ching? I've been pronouncing it wrong. It's not I Ching.
It's I Ching.
I Ching. Okay.
Yeah,
My apologies.
well, that's kind of misleading now because you have the I in front.
Yeah. So what's your background? What were you guys doing, just in life? What do you do for your careers, and kind of what got you into wanting to consult the I Ching?
Do you want to take that one?
Yes, I was in administration, financial administration. Yeah, that was mostly it.
Kind of very varied life. Let's put it like that. Worked with all kinds of areas. So in a broad experience.
Together, we've had even a landscaping business, very small, of course, not with big machines or so. But we in the UK, when we lived in the UK, we had a landscaping business. So we are, you can say jacks of all trades, but admin, of course, came in very handy when you started running your own business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a little bit of background. And then I continued. How did we come across I Ching? That is, I had a very good friend in the Netherlands, and she knew about I Ching, and she had the Richard Wilhelm, you can say it, the Richard Wilhelm translation of the Chinese classic. The Richard Wilhelm is the man who learned I Ching in China while he was a missionary in China, and he brought the I Ching to the West. He brought it back to Germany and wrote his book of it was a translation, and he himself wrote a commentary of the hexagrams, already starting to connect them up with our Western way of thinking, because the I Ching is a Chinese book and uses images and expressions from the Chinese culture. So while in fact the knowledge is universal, but it depends on which culture it goes from. Okay, my friend had this book, and when I visited her, she showed it to me and demonstrated to me with a question that I had, how the I Ching worked. But that was for me the first time that I experienced anything about divination. But it clicked with me. Later, I bought that book myself, and that was about 4 years before Tim and I met. And when we met, at a certain point, we had questions, and I proposed, let's consult I Ching. And from one thing came the other. I found in a bookshop the English translation of the Richard Wilhelm book, and then Tim to read it for himself, because the other book that I had was in Dutch. And there we have been consulting the I Ching for years, since 1988. That is in fact the story that led to this book that we wrote, with the idea of bringing the hexagrams to life in terms of modern psychology, modern situations. So that, understandable for Western people, just like we understood.
Right. And so can we talk about the trigrams and the hexagrams? So if people have never, have seen the I Ching or any of the diagrams, like you said, there's I think 64, right? There's 64 different patterns. And so can we kind of break it apart just a little bit? What is a hexagram and what are the trigrams? Because this is a way that you're able to read the I
Yeah.
Ching.
Well, of course, a technical description of a hexagram is a hexagram consists of 6 horizontal lines. The lines might all be solid, or some of the lines might be broken. The name of the 2 different lines is a yang line is a solid line, yin line is a broken line. Every combination of yin and yang lines make up the 64 hexagrams. So it's actually a perfect mathematical structure. That's the technical side. But for people who want to use the divination, who want to find guidance through divination, I would say to understand what a hexagram is in terms of real experience, a hexagram is really a diagram of a real life situation. And it's a diagram of a situation that is going through a process of change. So if you consult the oracle, you will receive a hexagram that is a description, a picture of the situation you're actually in, the situation you're experiencing. You will also receive another hexagram that will show what your present situation will develop into. So from that point, you have a window into the future. You can see the situation that you will be going into. That's where the whole process of divination, divining the future, comes in.
Great. And what is the difference between the hexagram and the trigram?
Well, the trigram is half of a hexagram. 2 trigrams combined make up 1 hexagram. The trigram consists of 3 horizontal lines. If you double the trigram, you have 6 horizontal lines. So a trigram is simply half of a hexagram. The reason you have trigrams is because there are 8 trigrams in total, and each trigram represents a certain energy. So, for example, you have trigram for hexagram 29, which is the power of flowing water. So, with this trigram, you have this energy, this power to move, to do things. Whereas there's another trigram, keeping still, which is in the shape of a mountain. So it's a trigram that represents a situation where you either can't do anything or you don't wish to do anything. So you have, it's complicated, but 8 trigrams produce the 64 hexagrams. Each trigram, which is part of a hexagram, represents energy. So if you have a hexagram, for example, say the top part of the hexagram is the trigram pen keeping still. And the bottom part of the hexagram is the hexagram, the receptive. Then you have a combination of a situation where you are in a situation that is not moving, that is static. So if you receive that hexagram, then you have to take into account that there is no progress in that situation. But you see, this is pretty difficult stuff to describe.
Sure. Yeah. And also I think like to decode, like you guys have said, you've been using it for many, many years, and it feels like it's kind of taken also a language of its own and how you've been able to interpret each of these, which leads to your translation of this book.
Yeah, what we've done is over the years, we have consulted the I Ching really a lot, many times a year. So we've consulted the I Ching with asking a question, for example, should we move on from this situation? And then you receive a hexagram that gives you information. And then you live through the experience that hexagram represents, and you start to understand exactly what the hexagram represents in terms of actual experience. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so over the years, we've simply built up a whole description of experiences that you will have when you receive one of those hexagrams. So if you consult the oracle and receive hexagram 5, and you read our description of hexagram 5 in the book, you will be reading about the experience of that situation that you have. So what our descriptions of the hexagrams make clear exactly what you're experiencing and what are the implications of the experience. What is happening to me here? What should I do? All of that detail.
Do you feel like the I Ching is a bit of a portal to be able to communicate with spirit or the creator, energies that we cannot see? Does it allow us, the metaphor with these different hexagrams, to be able to access higher consciousness?
Well, yeah, sorry, you go on.
Yeah, that's correct. My feeling over the years consulting the I Ching, because I have always been the person who did the actual consultation, just like with the tarot, shuffling the cards and choosing the cards. Most of the time I manipulated the sticks. I used stick method myself. And while I was doing that, I had this strong sense. It is like I'm picking up the phone and I dial the number of my coach. That somewhere up there is a coach, but because it's not an actual telephone line, it uses this medium of how the sticks fall or how the coins fall to, in some kind of, you can practically say, Morse code, give you the advice. And so that what you get out from the coins or the sticks translates into the hexagram, and be it all or not with moving lines, and that describes your situation and gives you advice about what to do or what you can do, what you can't do. But I've always had a strong idea. It is a certain kind of, it's a coach from the other side, specifically soul wanderer. So it's a coach.
Great. And so why sticks and coins? So can we talk about
Now, the sticks and coins are a kind of intermediary, just like this tarot, where you have the cards upside down, and you go through a random process, as you just randomly choose the cards. Be it that sometimes when you choose cards, that you have a feeling, oh yeah, that one, oh yeah, that one, or not. With the I Ching, rolling the coins or manipulating the sticks, which means in fact splitting a bundle of sticks and then counting. There is a random process involved, and that random process bypasses your intellect. And your intellect would say, in tarot terms, I like this card, but I don't like that card. But if you want to open yourself for the advice from somewhere else, or your subconscious, just how you want to see it, you need to bypass your intellect. And that is what you do. It's the random process of using a medium like coins or sticks.
Yeah, because the thing is that the conscious intellect access the oracle. It's impossible. The way we understand it is that you're really accessing your subconscious. But you can't do that with the conscious mind.
right?
That's impossible. So you have to do it using this random. The beauty of it is, of course, these random methods, whether it's tarot cards or I Ching coins, they work. Miraculously, they work. So you throw the coins, you arrange the cards, everything is completely random. You pick the cards, you throw the coins, you find a hexagram, and all of a sudden you have access to the future. But it is a future that our own ideas about it is that the subconscious is kind of a repository of knowledge, especially knowledge of the future. That within the subconscious, there is knowledge of the future. Our understanding is that it's because the future already exists. It already exists. Otherwise, how else could you do divinations?
Right.
The future exists. And the future can be found in the subconscious, but only through this random method.
You have to bypass your intellect, because in order to get contact with your subconscious, with your guide via the subconscious, you need to bypass the intellect, because it is in that stage of your consultation in the way. And once you have your hexagram, then the intellect comes back into play in order to understand it and translate it to your situation.
But the amazing thing about it, though, is that, okay, we have the theory that it's all locked away in the subconscious, but there is also this aspect of a guide, of a spirit guide. And the way we see it is somehow the guide facilitates this process of accessing your own inner knowledge. So the guide will enable you to see into your future, but it will facilitate it by presenting chronologically your forthcoming future. It's really along those lines.
Gotcha. So what are the advantages of being able to consult the I Ching and have an understanding of your future versus just allowing life to play out without having the knowledge of it?
Because that's a great question. I would love to answer that one. Our book, which is the I Ching Oracle, but we've subtitled it A Guide Through the Human Maze. And that is because to find a pathway through life, to see into the future, to find a path you need to follow, then you consult the oracle. The oracle is the guide that helps you find this path through life, that helps you find a path through all kinds of situations. But most importantly, the oracle, the guide who guides you through, will give you the possibility to unlock whatever talents you have, whatever expertise you have, and find some kind of fulfillment in life. So it's about finding fulfillment. It's about finding your talents, your expertise. It's about finding your purpose in life. So the whole point of doing these divinations, consulting the I Ching Oracle, is to find your way through life, to find a purpose, to follow a route.
Right. Do you think that go ahead.
If I may come in as well, if you have a certain destiny, a certain plans, then the oracle, like I Ching or Tarot, can help you to follow that path more effectively. Sometimes you are in a situation where you impulsively think, oh, I'm going to do this. For instance, I'm going to cancel the rent. I'm fed up with this. And then if you overrule your impulse and think, let's ask advice. And then the I Ching can sometimes tell you, no, that is the last you should do. Hang on to that lease contract because you need it a while longer. or hang on to that job or something like that. And sometimes it'll tell you, yes, indeed, this is coming to an end. You've reached the end of the line here, the end of the potential situation, and you can better leave. But it helps you to avoid unnecessary detours so that you can more effectively work towards what you're meant to do.
Yeah, it's really important for people in life. I mean, imagine you're trying to cope with a difficult situation. You can't see the way forward, so you consult the oracle. You ask the oracle, "How do I get through this? What is the best way forward?" And then with I Ching, then you will receive a hexagram that will tell you exactly the kind of situation you're experiencing, but it will also give you advice as to how to get through it. And also with the second hexagram, you will see how you could find a solution to getting through the situation, or how you can overcome the situation. So it's kind of a crucial tool for getting through life, particularly through difficult situations.
I always compare it with a sat-nav system, navigation system that you use to navigate through a city or something like that. There's a sat-nav. It's easier. You probably drive straight from A to B. And without, there has to be a good map reader. And without the map, that's very difficult. The city is of some size. So that is in fact what I have understood, what the oracle is.
Yeah, that makes sense because, another question that I had was, well, why can't I be my own oracle, right? Because they say the answers are within. So if I were to turn to find these answers or go into deep meditation or really trust my own subconscious, then can't we be our own oracles without having to consult or do a divination?
In a way, you can say that via an oracle, you consult yourself, even if you say it's coming from the subconscious. And sometimes, indeed, I meditate, I do transcendental meditation. Indeed, sometimes you go out of the meditation and you say, oh yeah, I can go about it like this.
Yeah, and I can see like the I Ching and tarot cards, like sometimes we have an intuitive sense, right? That we know, but if we were to do the I Ching or throw some cards, there can almost be validation, right? Of our inner knowing, but maybe there isn't a full trust of our own intuition.
Sometimes it's so that what you know is, yes, it's time to ask a question. You can practically say that question has been ripened, it has been coming to fruition. And when the time is right, and you say, yeah, now I want some advice. And the two meet in a way. I believe that an oracle is also, it is a mixed thing. It is on the one side, it comes from your subconscious. On the other side, it comes from spiritual guidance via the subconscious, perhaps. And then you say, it's not only the subconscious, you get some external advice. So it adds to your subconscious.
Yeah, and what I would say about that is that the beauty of these oracles, hexagrams, tarot cards, is that they are precise. They tell you exactly what is happening. It's clear. But often subjectively, we don't see it all. We might have ideas about, oh, this is how it's going to work out, or that will work out. But we don't realize, we don't see the entire situation. But what I love about I Ching is that a hexagram will give you very extensive information about the situation you're in that you might be completely unaware of. And that's where it's really valuable.
Yeah. Now let's go to how do you ask questions? Because I think I remember reading in the book that there's a way to be specific in your asking. And there's also, aren't there like some questions that, or ways to ask it? Like you're not going to ask it certain questions about life, but more questions like, should I take this job? Should I move? Should I write this book? So can we talk about how to be specific in cultivating your questions to be able to consult the I Ching?
Do you want to get them?
Yes, generally, the rule is the question has to be really relevant. The I Ching is an oracle you consult it for yourself. It is not like astrology where you can actually discern a path for a country or something like that. It is purely for yourself. And the question has to relate to something that is really there in your life. So you ask if you should move. If that is really relevant at that point, that is important. That the questions are relevant to your situation.
Great. And can you do the I Ching for others? So if I were to ask a question, could you throw coins and sticks for me, or is it more something that you have to throw it for yourself?
Yeah, definitely do it for yourself. That's much better. I think it's very important for the individual to consult the I Ching completely independently, to do it for themselves, and they don't need. Nobody needs to ask somebody for an I Ching reading. You could simply consult it yourself.
But I also think if you have a question, I think that when people do tarot readings, that they often let the Greer choose the cards, because that is when you make contact with whatever is behind the oracle. You have to manipulate the coins or the sticks, and then you make contact with whatever there is. If I do it, in fact, it's me who makes the contact, and the answer relates to me more than to the other. The only thing that you can do is help somebody to understand the conclusion. But that is actually more counseling, coaching, than that it is doing the oracle for. But yeah, that is it. You do it for yourself.
Makes sense.
You have to the action you have to do yourself, and the question also has to relate to the person who consults the oracle.
Great.
But I was want something else. You say something else about the question. Sometimes you ask a question because that is what you want, but it is at that particular moment completely impossible or unrealistic or one way or another. The question is off, not well. Then what the I Ching does is it gives you, it basically says, okay, you've asked the question, but this question I can't do anything with, I can't answer, because it's simply impossible. But this is your situation. And this is the potential of your situation. The problem that you have interpreting it is then you say, oh, I asked this question, can I go to the USA? And if that is at that point totally impossible, and the I Ching comes with a totally different answer, and say, what's this thing talking about? And then you have to try and realize what aspect in your life I Ching is talking about. For instance, yes, this question comes forth from that you're fed up with your situation and describes perhaps what you can do. If you have to hang on or that, but that's the most difficult, understanding what it says. If you can't immediately relate it to your question, what you have on your mind, because that's not always correct.
Yeah.
What you get, if you were consult oracles and you do it for a long time, then you start to get a certain feeling for it. And a certain, my experience is it hones your intuition. Your intuition gets better and better. And therefore your questions, the quality of your questions becomes better because you start to see more yourself already where it's going.
Yeah. And it's, interesting that you gave that example because I was going to ask, like, I've heard people before, they might pull a card and they don't like the answer. So they keep asking the deck the same question. They keep pulling cards and then they get really confused because the answer keeps changing. But I think what you bring up is really important because if you're asking a question, it's not of great relevance, or maybe that's not information that is ready to come to you, that the I Ching will give you something else to contemplate. So it doesn't mean that what you get is wrong, but it means if it doesn't quite connect, that I'm hearing that there's actually another lesson or there's more information in a different direction for you that you have to pay attention to.
Exactly.
And, you can't always get what you want, or, maybe in that moment in time that you're not ready for that information to come through.
But basically, the oracle says, yeah, all very nice, but this first, this is now important.
Yeah, and that's what I Ching does. It focuses completely on the situation you're in and what will develop from that. That is really the main thrust of it.
Great. And why 64? Why are there 64? Is it just with the math of the combination?
It's the math. It's the math because it's every possible combination of yin and yang lines in figures of 6 horizontal lines, and every possible combination of yin and yang lines produce 64 hexagons. It's the math thing.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, this was fascinating. I'm so glad that I had you guys on to introduce me to the I Ching. My listeners might already know it, and I might have listeners that do it themselves. But what I really liked about it was to know that I could do it on the coin method seemed a little bit easier to me because I don't have a math brain. And when I was reading the way to hold the sticks and put this many sticks in this hand and between these fingers, my brain just kind of shut off. But I think the easy man's way, it was the coin way for me, would be the way that I could choose because it's kind of basic and just remain follow.
That's the most popular method indeed. The sticks, it is in fact splitting a bundle and then counting them off. It is tedious, but it is a funny thing with the sticks, at least that I have. It's because it is tedious, it has a certain Zen effect, a certain trance effect. You just do that. And that way you focus on the oracle. And as you do that, you focus on the message. But coin size is faster. And it's certainly good. That's why those both methods are around. Since the class, Richard Mildreal describes both methods in his book. And what we have done in the I Ching Oracle, our book, I Ching Oracle Guide Through the Human Race, is we have given a step-by-step user manual for each method, so that it's just like a cookbook. You can open the book and start following the instructions.
Yeah, cookbook for your soul.
And the hexagram pops out of the oven, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for being a guest on the Path 11 podcast today. Where can people purchase the book if they're looking for it and would like your translation of it?
Where can people find the book? Generally, you can say in general, in their bookshop, but if they don't stock it, they should be able to order it in the USA. Our publisher, John Publishing, distributes their books via NBN, that is a big American distributor. But to find the book, they can look on the website of John Hunt Publishing, www.publishing.com. And then there's, of course, a search engine, and they can find the book. Another way is, of course, they can find it on Amazon, they can find it on Barnes & Noble, but if they go to John Hunt Publishing, they can find there exactly where they can buy the book. There's buy buttons and for the post pocket and the e-book. There's also ebook. These buttons click through to places where you can buy. If you have an in your area a bookstore shop that's interested in stocking mind, body, spirit books, and they should be able to order it.
Great. Okay. Well,
and I always, if I may advertise for the independent bookstore, that if they go to indiebooks.com, then they can order the book there if necessary, but they can look up where the bookstore is that is connected to the website, and then they can pick it up in their bookshop.
perfect.
I discovered that myself, so that is a great system. But because when you go to the bookshop, of course you browse around before you go to the counter and you ask if your order is arrived.
Yeah. Great. Well, I'll make sure to put that link, John Hunt Publishing. I think they might have also given us a link that goes directly to your book. So we'll put that in the show notes for our listeners to be able to click and find your book very easily. And again, thank you so much. I learned a lot during this podcast, and I hope everyone else did. So thank you again.
Yes. May I also tell you that they can also visit to know something about us, our Facebook page.
Yeah.
And that is at TJ Dowdle 88. I think you have those details for the forms that I filled in. The name of the page is I Ching and Divination. And we have, if the reader has questions to ask, then we have an email address, and that is tjdowdle@outlook.com.
Wonderful. Thank you. And for those of you, if you're searching for it, it's pronounced I Ching, but spelled I Ching. So my apologies in the very beginning for pronouncing it incorrectly. I just pronounced it the way that it was written. So I just want to make sure that if people are putting it in, it's the letter I and then Ching.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for all that. We'll put all of that information in the show notes so people can find you on social media. You were wonderful guests, and it was lovely to speak to somebody from the Netherlands. So thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
Thank you very much as well for having no such a guest.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, again, for listening to the Path 11 podcast. I will be bringing you another interesting guest next week. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's show. If you haven't already, please subscribe and rate and review the Path 11 podcast in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, this podcast is made possible by our sponsor, Path 11 TV. Visit path11tv.com to start a 7-day free trial and start streaming over 100 hours of exclusive video content on consciousness, healing, and life after death. That's path11tv.com, and be sure to use coupon code podcast30 to take 30% off your annual membership. Start satisfying your spiritual curiosity with a membership to Path 11 TV today. Bye for now.